So welcome. My name is Andrea. I am a Community Engagement and Partnership Coordinator at the Saginaw MVAA and part of the planning efforts to bring David here. And really something that my counterpart told me was that those who are here to hear David's message are meant to be here. And I think you'll get something inspiring and a little bit of hope out of it, and I'm really happy you're here. And this was a very collaborative effort with a lot of people to think, and we also have this recorded so that it can be available more broadly, so more people do get to hear this inspiring message. I do want to take a moment though to mention that if anything does bring up any feelings or anything that you would feel better processing with someone, we do have Angie with the duck over there is available if you need to take a moment and just step outside and stuff. We want to make sure that you're tied into your emotional needs. I also want to thank, and I'm going to read this so I don't forget anybody, because like I said, this was a big collaborative effort to bring David all over some of our smaller communities that don't always get to have a speaker of this caliber to bring that message to those smaller communities. So we really wanted to be intentional about that. So Northern Michigan Regional Entity, Partners in Prevention, the Grand Traverse County Veteran Affairs, Michigan Veteran Affairs Agency, the Lady Saginaw VA Medical Center, and the Northern Michigan Veterans Coalition, and also Asaba Valley Community Mental Health Authority. And without all these organizations, these efforts are really hard to plan and really bringing people together. And also just that collaborative work was inspiring as well. And also, what a beautiful space this is. This church, E-Free Church, is amazing. And just to be so gracious to open up their home to us to provide this is really exceptional. And so really, you get to meet a dynamic speaker, a storyteller, someone who's going to share of himself and really connect. It's really about building that connection and really his story and how he is so gracious to share it with us. I think it will inspire you and carry it with you and for everyone else. And so really, with all those challenges, you can still find that success and share that story with others. So when you are in the dark and you find that light, when you share it with others, then the whole space is full of light. So I encourage you to do that as well. So I really, without further ado, and thanking the community of Gaylord to host us as well. David Woods-Bartley.
So we all have days. No matter how long we've been on the planet, we have days, and there are days, and then there are days. And the day that I want to talk about is August 31st, 2011, and that was the day that I tried to kill myself. That's the day that the three-headed monster, in my case of trauma, of depression, and of suicidal ideation, the monster convinced me of two sets of things that I could no longer, the weight of which were too much to carry. On the one hand was that I believed, nobody said these things, but what I believed was I was worthless and useless and stupid and pitiful and grotesque and ugly. I was dumb. I was an embarrassment and a burden. It's important to note, none of this made sense. Was it true? Absolutely not. Did I believe it? Absolutely so. And if that wasn't enough, the straw, the thing that took me over the edge, was that on that day, August 31st, 2011, almost exactly 12 years ago, I believed that there's no way suicide could be selfish because everybody would be exponentially better off without me. Now I'm just a guy. I have no initials past my name. I'm not a clinician. I'm a man who continues to journey from mental hellness to mental wellness. And I'm not here to convince you of anything. This is really not a training. It's really a sharing. And so for those people who feel that, yes, indeed, you know what, no, I don't agree with you. I believe that, in fact, suicide is the epitome, it's the apex of selfish behavior. I honor your opinion. I honor your belief. I honor what you think is true. I'm not here to change that. All I'm here to do in service to the veteran community, in service to the community at large, is just to offer a different perspective, to share my opinions as a survivor so that we might be able to approach this monster, this crisis, in a different way. And the first opinion that I will share with you is that when a person gets to this, or here, or a noose around their neck, or measuring how much of this do I need to take with this, they've gotten there through a series of steps. And the foundation of that is something bad happens. Something traumatic has happened. But oftentimes when we say the word trauma, we think that there has to be certain things, like if these chairs were boxes. But if you'll bear with me, I'm going to use the word, but I want to circle back and give you a different perspective. But people don't just wake up and look on their calendar and say, oh wow, I have nothing else to do today, so I should kill myself. So something bad has happened, something traumatic. And we don't talk about it. Not just adults, little kids don't talk about it. We don't talk in our society, albeit our world, we don't talk about those things that keep us up at night. And what that does is it spawns a pattern of thought. We keep it inside. We know what it's like to ruminate, to fixate on patterns of thought. They create beliefs. We all have passionate beliefs. Here we are in the church. This may be the apex of beliefs. But there are people in the world who believe the world is flat. They're called flat earthers. There's a great many of them. There's millions of them. You can show them a picture of a blue marble taken from the International Space Station. They don't care. They say, no, that's Photoshop. There are people who believe that 9/11 was a perfectly scripted event. It was meant to happen. It was predicted to happen. It happened on purpose. And there are people who believe that whales create weather. I did not know that. I don't believe any of those things. But what I'm saying is that those beliefs, coming from a pattern of thought founded on a horrific set of circumstances, whatever it is, then in turn what those beliefs, and we know this to be true, when we're in a place of passionate belief, it kicks off individual feelings and then emotions which are collective. So it takes this finger and pulls it back to the person. People kill themselves not because of what they think. Thought plays a contributing role. Ultimately, people pull the trigger because of what they feel. People kill themselves because of what they feel. It's not because of what they think. And that's difficult. That's a problem because we're not really good about talking about our emotions. It doesn't matter, not even little kids. And so until we can find some ways to potentially create a way that we can talk about this, and I have some suggestions in the military vernacular, we're going to call them TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, maybe we can approach this thing differently. But of course, none of this awareness was in my mind on August 31st, 2011. And so at the time, my then wife Deanna were living about 2 hours east of San Francisco, and we had a perfectly rectangular 2.5-acre piece of property. I loved this property. It was magical. It was like Shangri-La. Our house was right in the middle. There was an acre pasture in the front and an acre pasture in the back. Man, was I going to miss this property. I was going to miss my bride. I was going to miss, in particular, what we were doing, what our job was, what our service to the world was. Please know, did I think about killing myself? I was 48 years old at that time. I probably thought about killing myself 1,000 times. Did I want to die? Absolutely not. Now, people will sometimes conflict those things, or they'll confuse them. Well, all you did is think about killing yourself. Yeah, I did. You must really want to die. No, I didn't. If you interview survivors like me, universalists, say, you didn't want to die. Well, then why are you going to kill yourself? Because in that moment, it gets to the point where it's harder to live than it is to die. Well, that makes no sense. Well, of course it makes no sense, because none of this makes sense. We're trying to understand this logically, but how do you understand an emotional malady based on a logical, intellectual approach? You can't. It is the oil and water. That's the problem that I'm talking about. So on that day, almost exactly 12 years ago, took a walk around the property, went inside and typed out this. There's nothing in my suicide note that talks about what I was thinking. The suicide note explains to my family what I was feeling and what I believed. To my beloved Deanna, my family and friends, I have decided that today the time has come for me to go. I am choosing to end my life so I can be free of the pain in my heart and soul, the betrayal of my mind, and the depth of self-hatred I feel almost every moment of every day. I've become the burden I wish I never would and a drag on those around me. I am a damaged shell of just a little insignificant boy, a child really, not yet close to what a man should be. Everyone, yes, I am certain that everyone will be so much better off without me. I am so very sorry, David. I took the note off the printer, And of course, without telling anybody where I was headed, I made just a short 20-minute drive. I didn't go to San Francisco, which was just 2 hours to the west. I went a little further east. I didn't go to the Golden Gate Bridge, I went to the Forest Hill Bridge. And it's 730 feet tall. It is 500 feet further off the ground than its more famous cousin. Now, for terrible, tragic reasons that are difficult to share, but I must share a little bit later, I've been to the bridge before. In this way, it wasn't in case of emergency freight collapse. It was in case of emergency, in case of this sort of crisis, in case where the belief got to this level of acuity, grab your car keys and go to the bridge. So I had done practice runs. So I got in my fire engine red, like, oh my God, there's a crisis behind the steering wheel. Red Dodge Dakota pickup truck. Drove to the bridge, parked my vehicle, turned off the motor, and remember, it was this, a lot of this was reflexive at this point, maybe because there was so much practice. Took hold of the steering wheel, kind of moved my body like any of us do when we're about to do something, and took a deep breath. Same time as I opened my eyes, clapped my hands. Reached over, took the note, center of the dash, keys, center of the note, exit, turn back around, check 3 times to make sure the door's unlocked. Because I want my family to know, it's okay, don't worry. You're going to be all right. It's time for me to go, and your lives are going to be much better. Cross over the road, make my way to the midpoint of the bridge, barriers here, over, out, hands out, like a bird. But birds fly up, they don't go down. I'm going down. Now, it's 730 feet. There's the North Fork of the American River runs perfectly perpendicular to the bridge. It takes a body 7.5 seconds to fall 730 feet. And I had thought hundreds of times, like, what's that going to feel like as I descend down to the river? What am I going to be thinking? And then all of a sudden, and really here we could say a God moment for sure, a question popped into my mind. And the question was, is it going to hurt? Never thought about that. Never did. So the beautiful thing, one of these TTPs that I'll talk about a little bit later, is the power of curiosity to gain understanding. We all know what it's like to be spun up. You know, it wasn't my foot on the accelerator to start that car, it was my emotions. Because emotions, we know what that's like when we're so emotionally wound up that we're moving towards something, sometimes something positive, sometimes in the extreme, something negative. And so now my mind attached to the question, because I got to answer the question. No, it wasn't I was afraid of the pain, but it's like, do you die? Do you feel pain before you die? And the reason it was life-saving is it kept me paused. It was paused long enough because, like its more famous cousin in San Francisco, this bridge too has an unfortunate reputation. I know somebody picked up the phone and called 911 because at one point, the sheriff's deputy approached me from the left-hand side. Interesting, the side closest to my heart. From the left-hand side, it did the thing that's the foundation of my work. In all my work with the military, in all my work with schools, in all my work with the medical community, he created connection. Now, we use that word a lot now, like, okay, yeah, let's be connected, but what is that? Well, let me tell you what it is. Actually, somebody brilliant, who you probably know, says it like this, Dr. Brene Brown. I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and they derive strength and sustenance from the relationship. In other words, it is when 2 or more are gathered together. Seen, heard, and valued. That's connection. And you know what it creates every single time? Hope. Hope is a weapon. It is the single most effective ordinance we can use in the presence of a former artillery officer. This thing is deadly to the enemy of suicide. Because hope saves lives. Because in the moment when any of us feel hopeful, not just in the extreme of suicide, in the presence of despair or distress or whatever, when we feel any modicum of hope, things are different. So he created connection. In addition to his taser and his duty weapon, he had hope on that duty belt because I wouldn't be here. So I'm taken off the bridge to an emergency room, and I'm going to go spend 15 days in a locked psych ward. Changed my life. Never had a bad day in the psych ward. I didn't see people screaming, yelling, and wearing straitjackets and frothing at the mouth. You know what I saw? I saw people in distress. I saw people in despair. I saw people who had been subjected to and experienced horrific trauma. I saw human beings who were in the fight for their life. And we would say, were they mentally ill? I don't know. Maybe. I'm not a doctor. Were they suffering? I could see that. Now, my family finds out where I am in line and say they were confused. That'd be an understatement. I still suffer. I still have terrible days of depression. I still think about killing myself from time to time, but I know what to do to get to the end of every day. But people just couldn't figure it out. They're like, what? Because people didn't see me how I still see myself at times on certain days. People saw me married to this wonderful woman who's still one of my closest friends, and we ran an animal sanctuary. And there's probably one person here who likes animals who would have loved the sanctuary. It's called A Chance for Bliss. And we were an end-of-life animal sanctuary. We wanted the ones that nobody wanted. We wanted the deaf ones and the dying ones and the ones who have been tortured and abused and maimed and everything. Give us the ones that nobody wants. And so we were a forever home. We did no adoptions. You as an animal came and stayed until you went to the big kennel or the big pasture in the sky. We did great work. As many as 100 residents at any one time. And on June 2nd, 2010, we were the cover story, not a little byline. We were the cover story in the life section of USA Today. You would have known in a million years that I was suffering. You would have known in a million years that I was suicidal. The one thing I'm passionate in my belief is that what hurts every single one of us the most in this room, what hurts every single one of us the most, you can't be seen. You can't be seen. If I'm limping, you can see that. If I have a sling, you can see that. But emotional pain, the experience of trauma, some sort of distress in our life, most often you can never see that. And so nobody knew. And where I go, I will oftentimes do a survey. We just did this morning in Alpena. A small group of people, there were half of the people at the gate, 4 of them had lost somebody to suicide. And I posed the question, of those souls who lost that fight, how many showed some of the obvious signs that we're supposed to look for? None. And see, that's a problem. We need to take the courses. The courses are incredibly important because they increase our education, which allows us to be more aware, which will allow us to be better at our communication. But please don't tell us that we're always going to see the sign, and please don't tell us that we can stop, because those two parts are not right. Everywhere I go, around the world now, it's never more than 10%. So we just need to equip people with the reality, saying, okay, in the 1 out of 10, you can see it, then you have a fighting chance. On the others, what do? We use awareness and communication, and maybe in tandem with these 3 TTPs, so you can get a semblance of somebody suffering. But also, don't tell us that we can stop somebody from killing himself, because we can't. I can't stop my kids from doing something. Unless I'm going to hold the soul and I'm happy to do it tight for 24 hours a day, I can't stop them from making that choice. But what I can do is I can implore, and I can beg, and I can beseech, and I can teach people how to create connection anytime, any place, anywhere, with absolutely anyone, and create the possibility that somebody could have the experience of connection where they feel seen, heard, and valued at a critical moment, and they need nothing more than an aspect of hope so they can make it to the end of the day. I've been alive for 4,298 days. I am not talking about that. I'm talking about everybody get to the end of Tuesday. That's it. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I just want to give us the possibility that tomorrow could be different, but I can't do that until I get to the end of today. But again, none of this is in my awareness way back then. And just 14 short months after the mountaintop experience of being in USA Today, there I was on a dark spot on a tall, tall bridge, one heavy thought away from killing myself, but connection. Connection, connection, connection. Connection creates hope. Hope is a lethal, awesome weapon. It is the best ordinance that there is, because hope saves lives. And here I continue on this journey from mental hellness, and it is a hell, to mental wellness. I continue because, as mentioned, I still suffer. I still have the thoughts, but I know what to do to get to the end of the day. And here's what I want to share with you. 4 and 3. What I call the what of suicide, the feeling of suicide, the cause of suicide, and then what do we do to be well? And then these 3 TTPs, these 3 tactics, these 3 techniques, these 3 procedures: recognition, understanding, and expression. These things work. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. Because the other thing that we're not telling people is that we can do everything perfect. We can get somebody to counseling. We may get them on medication. We may create the perfect environment, the perfect job, the perfect experience of somebody being connected. There will be still some souls who will end up choosing to end their life. We're not saying that. We have to equip people with the reality. I'm an optimist, But I think what we're doing is we're handicapping our ability to fight this thing because we're not looking at the reality of how brilliant a tactician this monster is. You have to give him credit. He hides among us. He's constantly fluctuating and being flexible in his ability to do terrible, terrible things to the emotional soul, to the souls of people. How about we throw him a curveball? So the first thing is we are imploring, we're asking, like, okay, why do people kill themselves? I'm like, it's a long question. Because if somebody shows up late, we say, hey, why are you late? Oh, I'm so sorry. You know, it won't happen again. You're really not going to gather any intel because every single why question, hey, honey, why do you love me? You have to explain yourself. You have to justify your feelings and everything else. It's a worthless question. It does no good, not just in this extreme. And to my point, I will say Kate Redfield Jameson, who's an amazing researcher, has the same thought. Each way to suicide is its own, intensely private, unknowable, and terrible. Suicide will have seemed to its perpetrator the last and best of bad possibilities, and any attempt by the living to chart this final terrain of life can only be a sketch, maddeningly incomplete. In other words, what Dr. Jameson is saying is we do not know why, and it is the wrong question. So imagine that instance in which we're late. Our supervisor, our wife, our brother, our friend might say, why are you late? What if they did this instead? We show up. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And instead of that, they say, hey, would you please help me understand? Like, that's the way they begin the conversation. Would you please help me understand what caused you to be late? And I go, oh, just imagine, like, okay, you're going to take a deep, it's like a breath of relief and exhale. You say, you know what, I'm so sorry. They go, okay, no, I get it. Would you please help me understand? I have to put my dog down. I'm like, oh, dear God, I'm so sorry. Now you have something to work with. But people oftentimes will say, well, you're asking me to understand that means you want me to agree. No, I'm not. Those are not the same things. I don't agree with suicide. I don't want people to kill themselves. I don't agree with racism and social injustice and sexual. I don't agree with those things. But until I can understand it, I can't present possible alternative responses. I don't use the word solution because solution and prevention suggest I can stop it. I can't. But what I can implore people to do, what I can teach people to do is become masters in the art of creating connection. Can we pause enough people to get to the end of the day so maybe they make it to the next day? Because they didn't think they could make it through the day before. Like, oh my gosh, I'm alive. Maybe I can make it through this day. Maybe it's 4,298. It doesn't matter. But how about we do something different, beginning by asking a different question? What caused? Well, for me, my opinion, something bad. Something's going on. People don't just wake up and just kill themselves. Can you move from what they call a low-risk position to a high-risk? You can, but it still doesn't take away the fact something bad has happened, must have happened in a person's life that they are not talking about, and they have created a firm belief that now has them emotionally spun up and moving to a very dangerous place. Past a certain point, there is no return. And a month ago, I had a similar situation. I had not felt this bad in close to 12 years. And I'm trying to think, what is going on? Where is this coming from? And thinking just come up and grab me. I've had depressed episodes, hundreds, in the last 12 years, but the acuity of this one was scary. Now, would I have killed myself? No, but the intensity of the suffering was off the chart. And so I said, okay, then I want to be able to describe this. In the moment, I didn't think I'd ever feel better again. Just think, I felt insignificant to the world. Now, when I was running this animal sanctuary, you think, okay, you're a pretty good guy. Now the sanctuary doesn't exist, and now this is what I do. You think, okay, you're a reasonably good human being. And I felt insignificant to the world. I suffer from horrific self-esteem. Now I had no self-esteem at all. And the most dangerous thing, the thing that really scared me, was that I believed on that day that my family that has done nothing but love and support me from really, frankly, from the time that I was born, but particularly these last 12 years when they've understood the level of my suffering, what the monster had the ability to do was to have me believe that my family had reached its breaking point. Like this one instance, I couldn't talk to them. Like, no, I couldn't pick up the phone and say, gosh, you know what, my 3 older brothers, John, Jim, and Tom, like, you know what, no, they're tired of this. No, we don't want to talk to you anymore. You know, come on, you should be better right now. I believe that to be true. Nothing could be further from the truth than that. That my wife now, or my previous wife, who's just an absolute sweetheart, that I couldn't talk to them. But the one thing I did do, and this is only because I've been so supported, is my wife now and I will have, because she knows my story, we have a numeric system. So it's 0 to 10. 0 is puppies and kittens and cotton candy coming out of water fountains and everything else like that. Life is perfect. 10 is, you better get back to a psych ward. So my beloved knew something's not right. She could just tell. And it definitely was not right. She said, "Where are you at? What number?" I said, 8.5. She's like, "Oh no." So unbeknownst to me, she called in the cavalry. So the cavalry is my 3 brothers, John, Jim, and Tom, my sister-in-law, Stacy. So then everything goes up the chain of command. Now I use that word chain of command because my brother, and the major will appreciate this, is one of those Mustangs. So he enlisted in 1970, and sir, ultimately he pinned on 2 stars. So amazing. And he's really my dad. We lost our father when I was 7. He was 18. He's my dad. I've lived on post. I understand the Army. I love the Army. I get to work with the Army now. So when he found out that his son, in fact, was suffering, he texted me. I ignored the text. Then he called me. I can't ignore a call from my dad. And here's, I believe that I could not tell this man that now I will show you my phone, the way he ends in a text conversation, when we text back and forth. You know how this man ends every single text, including the ones that we did today? Every single one, he never misses. 42 years in uniform, an incredible tank commander. 42 years from a private to a 2-star general. You know how he ends every single text? Love you, 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 love you. He never misses. I believed that all that was going to be done. No more. Like, that's the extent, that's the power of this thing. That is like the most illogical thing in the world. Even more acute than it was when I was going to kill myself. And the first thing he says to me is, "David, I love you." "I know you do, but I forgot." And then he says, "Tell me what's going on." Not like, "Hey man, you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps." Like, "Come on, we've been here before, let's do this." None of that. He said, "Tell me what's happening. Share with me." So I share, and all I did is listen. And then he says, "Okay, may I say something?" Like, he asked my permission for the input. He didn't just start to give me fatherly advice. He said, "Yeah." And in the course of 45 minutes, I went from an 8.5 down to about a 3. That's like the Richter scale. That's unbelievable. And I think about it. It's hard for me to even express how powerful I knew it was powerful, and I talk about how powerful the monster is, but having had this most recent acute experience, he had convinced me that this man who tells me he loves me multiple times every single day, more than my beloved wife does, that he had reached his breaking point. Wow. Now, my fear about that is if a person was in that same space and they don't have the same level of support I have, that's dangerous, because I think they want to be opponent. Because it puts all these feelings, these feelings as you feel like one of the dogs that came to the sanctuary had been used as a bait dog in a dog fighting ring. There have been animals that looked like they've been fed into wood chippers. There have been animals that have been dumped on the side of the road. Right? It feels like that and 1,000 times worse. It feels like a physical weight. You do not have the ability to construct or imagine a future. It makes no sense, but that's how intense these feelings are. And part of my want is, if you can't imagine something, you can't believe it. And so I want to try to give you the ability to imagine what this is like, so you believe in the suffering that is all around us. Because in that place of suffering, your tank of hope, which is typically not really that full anyway, but thankfully it doesn't need to be, that whole thing can be like, take the drain plug out. And in the absence of hope, I don't think you can survive. I don't. Because hope defined is the expectancy that something good is going to happen, not the guarantee. Like, with hope, you only need the expectancy. Well, if you don't even have the expectancy that something good is going to happen, how do you make it to the next day? Well, unfortunately, we're seeing a situation where people don't make it to the next day. And I went into the psych ward with no hope. I was freaked out. Second day, really met with a holy man. Now, he wasn't a cleric, he wasn't a pastor, he didn't have a white collar. But this man changed my life because you know what he allowed me to do? I discovered the what. What was the what? What had me, as a person who's running an end-of-life animal sanctuary, feel like he was a total worthless piece of junk? How does that happen? You'd have to think, dude, you're taking care of dying animals for the love of God. You're a pretty good guy. No, I'm not. The world is flat. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. That's the power of belief. That's what this thing can do. And on the second day, this glorious psychiatrist, this shrink who did not look that way, did not present that way, did not talk that way, helped me discover it was two stringers. And interestingly, under the Forest Hill Bridge, there's two legs, two streams that come together, the North Fork and the South Fork of the American River. And in that vortex, there is it's like an undertow, it's like a riptide. You can be the strongest swimmer, you can be a rescue swimmer in the Coast Guard, that thing can have you go down. And in this, it becomes harder to live than it is to die. Not because of weakness, not because of resiliency. Please know, I did not lose my will to live. Please do not say that. Because that's a not so subtle implication is, God, you know what? Should have tried a little harder. You know what I lost? I want to live because I lost my hope. So I had two streams. Genetics. Grandfather had killed himself when my dad was really young. My father, from what my brother shared with me, because I was just 7 when he died, Dad had suffered tragically from clinical depression, like hollowed out like a fillet of fish. Like he had nothing left. And so at 41 years old, when cancer came knocking at the door, hey, James Bartley, time for you to go, Dad had nothing left. And so the doctor talked about this thing about genetic predisposition, and he analogized it to kindling for a campfire. Which at first I'm like, dude, where are you going? And then he said, what do you need if you're going to do a campfire? What do you need? And I said, okay, like, are you a freaking doctor? Like, where are we going with this? And he said, you need a match. I said, you need a match. And he's like, yes! And he got really excited. And then he said something, words, Rudyard Kipling, in 1923, in his speech, the London College of Surgeons said this: words are, of course, the most powerful drug ever used by mankind. Here's what this doctor in that moment said to me. He said, it breaks my heart. Now that's so surprising that a doctor would say that. Like in that instance, he said, it breaks my heart that match, and he held it up like he was holding the traditional wooden match, that match is trauma. And I had two. The first one I knew of but totally discounted, and that was the fact that I lost my father when I was just 7. But now I'm 48 years old. Like, hey man, what I told myself, what society will tell us, is that happened more than 4 decades ago. Let it go. And I'll never forget what he did next. Is I said, you know what? I lost my dad, but no big deal. And remember, he looked pained. Like what I said made his heart hurt. He didn't say anything, but there was this look on his face. And then he said, well, David, let me say something. He didn't ask my permission. He said, no, let me say something. Took his hand, and he approximated the height of about a 7-year-old child. And he pointed to him and said, David, when a little boy loses his father at such a tender young age, it's a trauma that can last a lifetime. So now he's approximated my height. We hear it here every Sunday. It is also true in a secular environment. The truth will set you free. And I remember saying, I was like, come on, man, really? He says, David. And now, he's older than me. Now he said, son, think about it. But he's saying it in this loving, like fatherly, grandfatherly way. He's not preaching. He's not lecturing me. He says, son, think about it. Like you got 2 pillars in your life and one was just taken away. Like, that's going to impact you. It kind of messes up your wiring. But he was really, in fact, he says, David, people aren't broken. People get hurt, people get injured, people get wounded, they get traumatized. But there's also the possibility, not the guarantee, of healing. And I said, David, it just that impacted you in a way that can last a lifetime. Doesn't mean you can't heal from it. But then I'll never forget, the best question I will ever be asked for the rest of my life is, has there been anything else? And there had been something that I was never telling anybody. There's no way. I don't care how safe of an environment you're going to create. Because I knew where he was going, and he wasn't going to talk about this secret. No, I'm not talking about this secret. But it was like he had a magical power of compassion. Now, compassion can be, like, I'm going to give you a big hug, like I hug Andrea, like I hug Angie when I see her now. That can be compassion, but compassion can also be, Krista Tricklet talks about this in her TED Talk, curiosity without assumption. Like, how many people had he sat with? And he wasn't looking at his watch saying, okay, man, we got 15 minutes, let's get the heck out of here. I got other crazy people to deal with. No. It's like I was the only person in the room. Not only was I the only person in the room, I was the only person in the hospital. It felt that way. So it was so magical, like a wizard, that it was like I was listening to a radio show. Because what I'm listening to is me telling a story. Well, actually, a better way to say it is, what I'm listening to is my story, this secret that I was never going to tell. Why am I hearing it? Because it's actually coming out from me. And what the secret was, that when I was 11 years old, I was brutally tortured and I was sadistically sodomized and raped on repeated occasions by a Boy Scout leader under the guise that real life monster told me that these were part of important initiations and all the scouts go through it, but remember, we never talk about it. Now, I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you said something and you want to take the words back. Like, I cannot believe that I have said this to this person. And all of a sudden now, involuntarily, I am crying in a way I didn't think humanly possible. Like I'm emoting in a way, I'm screaming, I'm yelling, I'm crying, and I'm trying to move, but my feet are like, they're cemented to the floor. I can't move. Now, I can't escape. Like, you had given me a gun at that point, I'd have shot myself not once, 10 times before I died. And here's the amazing thing. Because we look at it one way and we think, oh no, but look at it this way, like, oh yes. What he didn't do is try to stop me from crying. He didn't come and say, oh man, I love you, brother. No. Not that that would be a bad thing, but he let me cry. He must have known what Lady Bird Johnson said. People need to be given the opportunity to hurt out loud. He let me cry. Talked to a veteran the other day, talks about this incredible support group, says, we have a no tissue rule. And I'm like, brother, I think I know where you're going, but could you explain? He says, yeah, when one of us are together, when we get to that point where because of the safety of the group that we can actually cry, no tissues. I said, bingo, brother, I love that. That's what this man knew in that space. Now, I think we've all had an incredibly deep cathartic cry when we got nothing left in our lives. It's like, I am done. I am spent. My pants are soaked because I've cried that hard. I am a hot, terrible, traumatized, upset mess. And I'm hanging down like the scarecrow, Wizard of Oz. I don't know what, like, I don't know what's going to happen. Just kill me now. And I hear my name, and I lift my head up and barely open my eyes, and I really can't see because they're already swollen, and there's still tears, and everything looks okay. And then I'm shocked and awed, but in the most extraordinary way, because what he's done is he's leaned forward now, he's holding my two hands. Like the way that my father, who I've not seen in 41 years, would have held my hands had he known his baby boy had suffered like that. And this extraordinary man, what he says, he only needed 4 words. It's not your fault. The truth will set you free. Changed my life. The question that had me stay safe long enough for a first responder to use the hope on his duty belt to get me to this extraordinary human being to discover the what. And I think the true cause is in fact trauma. But again, I think we have a bad habit of saying it has to be a certain thing. It can be anything. And in fact, you know what? It's only 13 words. You don't need the DSM to describe it. Here's trauma, Cambridge Dictionary. Severe and lasting emotional shock and pain caused by an extremely upsetting experience. Severe and lasting emotional shock and pain caused by an extremely upsetting experience. Let me paraphrase that. It can be anything. Anything. Unique to the individual. Well, that shouldn't be upsetting. Oh, I'm sorry. You shouldn't feel that way. Oh, let me get right on that. Well, you shouldn't believe that. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. And until we have this thing that Krista Tricklet talks about, the brilliant interpretation of compassion, curiosity without judgment, to realize how profoundly right Lady Bird Johnson was in that we have to let people learn out loud, we're not going to to make any progress because we'll think, well, no, that's no big deal. Well, it is to me. How about you give me the grace it is to me? How about you seek to understand me? How about you give me the experience of feeling seen, heard, and valued? How about you hand me the wonderful glass filled with hope? Then maybe things can change. Trauma is everywhere. We have to realize that it impacts everybody differently. Jane Levy has this amazing quote that puts it in such a profound way. And she says this: trauma fractures comprehension like a pebble shatters a windshield. The wound at the site of impact spreads across the field of vision, obscuring reality and challenging belief. Bingo. We've all been behind the wheel, driving along, or in a passenger's seat, and something hits the windshield. I mean, it frightens us, it scares us. It doesn't matter how fast or slow we're going. And then check me if I'm wrong, we all probably have at least one scratch or dent on our vehicle. And if it's there long enough, we don't even notice it anymore. But every time we get behind the wheel, there's something on the windshield. Do we ever not see it? It's always there. And what happens if it's unattended to? What happens? Then it grows across the field of vision. It begins, sometimes you've got to move around because you don't see things straight because the thing is spread across the field of vision. That's trauma. And you think about how many people are carrying around unhealed trauma, unexpressed trauma, unresolved trauma. How many people, and we wonder why people are killing themselves? It's really not a surprise. But it doesn't mean it's a hopeless situation because there are ways to allow people to leverage these three things that I'm talking about in an imperfect way, but just a different response. Because right now we're doing the same thing, which have a certain level of efficacy. I'm not saying throw out those. I get the easy job because I'm standing on the shoulders of the great work that's being done now. All I'm asking us to do is try just a little something different. How about we sneak up behind this thing? So we have a Vietnam veteran here, thank you. And even before him was World War II, and they had the great tiger tank. And they said, well, the tiger tank's invincible, you can't kill it. They had one vulnerable spot. From behind. If you can come from behind the tiger tank, you can take it down. How about we come from behind this thing? We're trying to fake one, we're trying to beat it one-on-one, you're never going to win. Two, we're just trying to do it front on. How about we flank them? How about we come up from behind? How about we come from below? How about we come from top? These three TTPs are the tactical method to approach this thing, not just for ourselves, but for other people. For our veteran brothers that are here, and they say, what do I do to help a brother? Do this. But then it lands on you as well, and that's why this thing has this beautiful reciprocity to it. Because it is that powerful. It is that strong. But we just got to do things a little bit different. So once I understood, okay, here's what I'm dealing with, then I got to do it. I didn't just wake up one day and be well. I didn't. I know what to do. It is body, mind, and spirit. Diet, sleep, PT, time outside. I take two drugs. Now I actually just have a third one because this most recent experience had my amazing psychiatrist, different than this psychiatrist. I mean, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I've had the two greatest psychiatrists of all time. I'm in the hospital and now ongoing. We're going to add a third drug in because this most recent experience, we both realized there is this pattern. Every so often you dip into this trough. And so I have some anxiety. This is a brand new drug. There is one side effect is what they call facial dyskinesia, which means facial tics, which means there's a possibility for doing what I do, I'm going to be standing in front of people with my face ticking. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I want to deal with that, but do I want to continue to suffer like that? So I don't miss on my meds. I don't miss on my therapy. I don't miss on my psychiatrist. I don't miss on my support group. And the beautiful thing now, sitting with men, like the veteran talked to me, I'm a non-vet, but I love veterans, of course. And this is my first, I'll be honest, this is my first, in all the active duty work I've done, I've never done anything with the Veterans Administration. So thanks to Angie, and thanks to Andrea, and all the incredible sponsors, now to be able to do this. My brother is a veteran, so now I feel like I give back to my guy. So in the men's depression support group that I go every Tuesday from 6 to 8, if I'm not traveling, I walk out of there and I have hope. You know why? Because I hear other people's experiences, which gives me on difficult days to get to the end of the day, hold on, pain ends. Hope is that powerful. But the whole thing comes down to connection. Connection, connection, connection. Three most important words in mental health are, wait for it, connection, connection, connection. It is. Seen, heard, value. We know what that's like. We know what it's like when we feel like somebody, man, I feel like every time I'm with this person, why is it that I feel better? Well, I'm going to tell you, because you feel like you're the most important person in the world. You feel like this person listens to you like you're like you were like a prince. You feel so much better about yourself when you're simply in the presence of this human being. How hope, it is impossible for hope not to come right in after that. It's not. So what is hope? So I work with a great deal with the Coast Guard. You realize, let me just pause for a second. This is not a public service announcement. The Coast Guard, do you realize the Coast Guard? One, they're worldwide. We have Coast Guard in Japan, in Bahrain, in the Netherlands, in Guam. We have Coast Guards all over the world for the United States Coast Guard. Do you realize they do their job with less people than the New York City Police Department? Like, that's how extraordinary these people are. So, in working with one and doing this thing about hope, realize hope is the expectancy, not the guarantee, the expectancy that something good is going to happen. One of the captains, Captain Phi from Clearwater, who I was just there not long ago, told me a story about a gentleman who had a boating accident. He fell into the water on a Friday. They finally, after an exhaustive search, they finally found him treading water on Sunday afternoon. And they pulled him out of the water, and the first question was, "Sir, my God, how did you make it?" And here's what the guy said: "I knew you were coming. Hope kept me alive because I knew you were coming. I knew you wouldn't give up until you found me." So what is the definition of hope? You can look it up yourself. It's the expectancy that something good is going to happen. Can we leverage connection, seeing, heard, and valued, to give somebody the expectancy that something good is going to happen, to get them to what? The end of the day. That's it. Can we do that? Is that doable? I think it is. And animals at the sanctuary, it was so common. I mean, not that it was a joke, but it was just, people would come. I think Dee and I had to bite our tongues when someone would come with an animal at the end of life, and let's say it was a dog in a very bad situation. Not that we were laughing at the dog, and they'd say, "Well, probably has about a month to live." And we'd say, "Oh, okay, yeah, right." That dog would live for a freaking year. I mean, we never had an animal that would pass away in the timeline that somebody told us that they expected an animal, because God loved my former wife. Those animals felt seen, heard, and valued. They were well cared for. It was like the freaking Ritz-Carlton. We cooked for them. We had people come in and do massage and acupuncture. Why would you do that for dying animals? Well, why wouldn't you do that? That's the power of this thing. I've seen it with animal beings, I've seen it with human beings, I've seen it with sentient beings. This thing works. And realize why it's so important. And Shakespeare said it best: "The miserable have no other medicine, only hope." Friends, hope is what? Hope is the thing. Because what happens is, for somebody like me, when we're at that place where it's harder to live than it is to die, you know what the atmosphere is there? There is no hope. One man said it this way: "I am now the most miserable man living. If what I were feeling were equally distributed to the whole human race, there would not be one cheerful face on the planet. Whether I shall ever be better or not, I do not know. I worry that I never will. To live better or die, it appears to me." Now, before I tell you who said it, we would never use the word wimp as an adjective and apply to this human being, because this human being is Abraham, yes, Lincoln. Isn't it interesting? How does the quote start? He's not talking about what he's thinking. What does he say? "If what I were feeling." What did he say at the end? "To live better or die, it appears to me." In other words, what he's saying is, you know what? It's becoming harder to stay alive than it would be to die. Not out of weakness, not out of resiliency. Like, this was one resilient dude, my gosh. I'm a resilient guy. I have a strong will, but the president and I, we're losing our want to live. That is a very incredibly dangerous place, because the thing will suck you into isolation and there's no coming back. William James, who's considered to be the father of American psychology, says this is what isolation is like. "No more fiendish punishment could be devised, were such a thing physically possible, than one should be turned loose in society and remained unnoticed by all members of society." Well, the problem is, there are people like that all around us. They feel completely invisible. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because I see their physical body. Who cares? I'm not talking about reality. What I'm talking about is how they feel like the most fiendish punishment. God love. But you know, the other side of what Dr. James says, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. Not just for what you do, for who you are. In other words, what I think the great man is saying is, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving for connection, seen, heard, valued. So how do we create? 3 methods. There's lots of different ones. I'm going to share my 3 of them. So recognition. To connect with somebody, you have to recognize like their physical presence, like I see you as an entity. Then you need to understand it because, of course, human behavior makes no damn sense. And then you've got to express to them. People are dying to know how you feel about them. Well, I know they know I love them. Tell them again. Like my brother tells me multiple times. I bet today he will probably tell me he loves me probably 20 times, maybe. My wife doesn't tell me that much, and that's okay. I got to teach her. Like, look what your brother-in-law does, for God's sakes. So, I'm a freak about names. We all have a name. Dale Carnegie said it best in his book, in the book, How to Influence and Influence People. He said, to a person, the sound of that person's name is the most powerful, sweetest sound in any language, and it is. I'm sure each and every one of us has had the experience at least once where somebody has remembered our name and we had no expectation. They're like, oh my gosh, Andrew, it is so nice to see you again. What? I know for me, it is that place, and it always happens in a moment when incredibly I need it the most. And I'm going to teach you a technique in just a minute. And what I want you to do is, because we're not going to see the signs, I want you to become good at remembering Andrea's name, and then her most significant partner's name, and then if they had children, their name, and if they had animals, their name. Why is that? Because if you have enough touch points in a person's life, and for the veterans who are watching me, you want to help a brother out, if you have enough touch points in a brother's life, in a sister's life, you then can become aware of individual causal factors, relationships, finances, whatever it is, that individually may not have them go to a place of crisis, but collectively they can. And if you can help dismantle and disassemble some of those crisis points, things can be different. Because you've had them feel seen, heard, and valued, but you can't get there unless you become a master of not just their name, of the people. And you do it over a period of time. You don't sit down and have an interview little by little by little. So, let me tell you a story how it impacted me. So, a month ago was this horrific day. So, 2 weeks before that, at the gym where I go, and I'm good about PT, I go work out at least 4 to 5 times a week. And this gym is really, really busy. There's lots and lots of people. And they're people that I have gotten to know. I've created what I call micro relationships. We all have them, where you pick up your dry cleaning, where you go to the grocery store, especially in a smaller town. You know certain people to not the extent of maybe you're beloved, but you know them. And so there are people at the front desk I know, and people I work out with. And I've planted those little Tesla charging stations, quite frankly, because I know at one point I'm going to need you to help fill me up. So let me create a relationship with you. Is it selfish? I don't think it's selfish. It's just about wanting to be connected. So 2 weeks before this nightmare day, there's a new person at the front desk. Her name is Amanda. She's got a name tag on. Pretty easy. So when you go somewhere and someone has a name tag, or their name is embroidered on their shirt, please call them by the name. It's not there just to kind of look cute. The next time you go out to dinner, maybe you go out to dinner tonight, please do this. When the server comes up and says, hey, are you ready to order? We are, but could you please tell us your name? You will shock people. So, here's Amanda. Amanda, my God, you're new here. Welcome. This is a great place. I love coming here. My name's David. And over the next 2 weeks before this period, this other day, just have these touch points. She doesn't know who I am. There's like, she's seeing hundreds of people. And you know when you're starting a new job, like you're trying to just figure things out. So here comes this nightmare day. I do not want to do PT. I do not want to see anybody. I know I've got to get to the end of the day, the end of the day, the end of the day. So I go in and I think, oh, thank God, it's Amanda still at the front desk. She doesn't know who I am. I can just like slip in and get this nightmare done. So I walk up, have my card in my hand, and before my card is scanned, here's what happens. Your name is David, right? I'm shocked. I cannot believe that this person knows who I am. Like, how many people? You must have seen 500 people in these first 2 weeks. I'm thinking this. I'm not saying. Now I'm really confused when she said, I am so excited to see you. I'm like, okay. Like, all right. Now, it really confused them when she actually gets emotional and says, I want to thank you. Like, look around. Just this thing, and just like, is this me? And I said, man, I'm confused. Like, what on earth could I have done that would have you want to thank me? And she says, David. Then she got kind of stern. I kind of shifted her position and said, David, not only are you the only person that has consistently remembered my name, you are the only person that every time you come in, you call me by my name, and I made myself a promise that the next time I saw you, before I scanned your card, I would remember your name. She had no idea. You will do this for someone. You will see them. They look like they're okay. How they feel, you have no idea. And that's simple. I mean, it has no idea. Now, would I have killed myself if a man didn't remember my name? No, I wouldn't have. But do you realize the power you hold in your hand to alleviate some degree of suffering simply by the fact that you've taken the time to remember somebody's name? And how it's like a crepe thin layer off the back of the person who's suffering. Like, it is that powerful. Difficult part is you're almost never going to see it. Amanda, to this day, when I see her again, she got promoted, so I don't get to see her very often. One day I said, hey, you know what? I need to tell you a story. But until then, she won't know. So, people say, well, I suck at names. You know what? You don't. You just haven't practiced. Here's the technique. P-A-R-A. First thing, pause. Stop. Just a moment. So, then ask, hi, my name is David. Your name is Patty. So I always spell it. Always. Now, Patty, you can get P-A-T-T-Y or P-A-T-T-I-E. Okay. You were kind of passionate that the Y is the correct way. Absolutely. Sir, I would say in the back, my name is David. Your name is?
Mike.
Mike? So short for Michael. Okay. Do you prefer Michael or Mike? Either. Okay. That's good. So, and so, I know John. Now, you knew John, J-O-N or J-O-H-N?
J-O-N.
Oh! Brother, thank you. So, how many, let me ask you, because sometimes I go through like 5 or 6 people where the names are like Carl. Okay, dude, help me out here. You really can't spell, well, you could do Carl, okay? You could look at Patty's like, dude. So, brother, how many times, your email address is correct, right? Does anybody ever say Dear J-O-H-N?
Yes.
Yes. And your mail probably comes J-O-H-N?
Usually they get that right.
Okay. How do you feel, and especially on the email thing, when someone, like the email says J-O-N dot at whatever, when they don't take the time to notice the proper way to spell your name?
Exactly like that. Like they didn't take the time to understand.
Now, thank you. Is somebody going to kill himself if you spell their name wrong? Probably not. But remember, a person like me, there is a mounting pile of belief. And all of a sudden, if my name is John, and it's spelled J-O-N, and it's in my email address, and people don't take the time to simply slow down and spell my name right, could that potentially add one more layer of a belief of insignificance to who I am? Like, God, of course you're not going to miss me, man. They can't even spell my name right. Good Lord. And it's right there. Could it do that? Telling you it can. That doesn't make any sense. Of course it doesn't. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. That's the genius of the monster. He lives in the spaces in between the details. He's that exact. So always spell it, please. Now, with Mike and I, our names are pretty simple. So that's why I asked Mike, do you prefer Mike or Michael? So people ask me, Dave or David. I really don't like Dave. I don't. I love David. I love my name. It means beloved. I've always loved my name. Even though it's kind of an older name, I love it. So, pause, ask, spell it. Does anybody here not like their name? No? Small group? Okay. You'll usually, it's about 10%. You'd be surprised. Some people don't like the sound of it. Some people, but what's crushing to me is, and I get this a lot in my military audiences, because it's a lot of young men for the most part, guys who are married, who are named after their dad. Let's say their name is Tom. This is a dad that raped them, that was a raging alcoholic, that beat their mother, that abandoned them. So imagine your name is Tom, and you're named after this thing that was the sperm donor. Like, how do you feel every time you hear your name? And so you ask the question, and they say, no, I hate my name. And you say, why? Not why, but what's behind that hatred, and they share with you. Now, then the next question, please ask, would you like me to call you something different? Those people always have the answer. Yeah, you know what? Thanks for asking. I've always wanted to be called Steve. Okay, now every time you see this person, you call him Steve. Do you think there is a possibility that at one point, Steve, formerly known as Tom, Steve comes up to you and says, you know what, Andrea, I gotta thank you. You don't know how, I can't tell you how much it means to me that every time you see me, you call me by the name that I want to. Do you mind if I share something with you? Do you think, because you have created this space where somebody feels seen, heard, and valued in such a simple way, that you have opened up the door that maybe they could share something because they feel safe with you? Do you think it's a possibility? All because you did that? It's just as important. Like, no, my name is not spelled John. My name is Sean. It's not spelled with an H. It's spelled whatever it is. These small grace points are so powerful that it can have somebody potentially, not always, potentially possibly move forward to open up their heart a little bit. But in the absence of that, people are going to stay in their own space. So pause, ask, spell it. Do you like it? What's the story? So John, do you know what the story is behind your name?
No.
All right, you've left me out, brother. That's okay. So, Angie, do you know the story behind your name?
I was the last of 4 children, and my dad wanted to name me Kim, but it wasn't his turn. It was my mom's turn. So she named me Angela, and neither of them ever called me Angela. Everyone always calls me Angie. So I'm Angela Kim, but I prefer to go by Angie, or if I'm being goofy, Ange.
Angie, okay. Do you like your name?
It's fine. It's a good name.
Okay, that's passionate. Woo! That'd be like if we were in a relationship. Do you like me? Yeah, you're okay. That's all right. Whoa! Did I ever want to be called something different?
No.
No? Okay. So, pause, ask, spell it, do you like it, what's the story? R, so it's P-A-R-A, R is repeated. If it's a unique name, or even if it's, like I met a Jeannie at our last thing, I'm wondering, because she said she got Jeannie, Janie, all these different things. I just was thinking, am I saying it right? I just want to get it right. Sometimes it's a little more exotic. People are usually, and Jeannie was, she was very gracious. She said, no, it's close enough. No, I want to get it right. People are blown away when you really want to get it right, seeing, heard, valued. So P-A-R, repeated, and then A is great association. Just try, and you're going to forget. So I'd see this beautiful soul who told me her name was Andrea, and all of a sudden I forgot. I've had this happen. I've taught a class, and all of a sudden I forgot the name. Here's what my big brother, here's what the general taught me. David, it's okay. It happens. No big deal. Go up and say, I'm so sorry, I'm embarrassed. I forgot your name. Would you please help me remember your name? You're asking the person to help them remember them. Like, okay, I don't think anybody's going to have any offense to that. Like, I would really like to remember. And I can tell you name story after name story after name story. This one thing, and then you know this person, their spouse, their children, their dogs, because then you become aware of people's hard and special days, and then make note of them. And then when they have something to celebrate, maybe beyond their birthday, let them know and help them celebrate. When they know they have something that's going to be difficult, the anniversary of an event, something they have angst about in the future, let them know you're there to support them. You don't think that makes a difference for people because you listen, because you do something about it, because you validate their feelings? I can't say enough about that. So now we recognize somebody, now we got to seek the understanding because, of course, human behavior makes no sense. Not just in the extreme of suicide, but it just doesn't make any sense. So one day we get a call, and it's an animal shelter close by, and they say, hey, we have this old dog. We said, okay, well, what's the story? So the story was, old man, probably about 90 years old, walks in with this old dog. And it's an old basset hound, so it's caramel color, and he has a suede back like an old horse, and he has no teeth on the right-hand side, so his tongue is hanging out. He is a hot mess. And what happened was he went out to the shelter worker and said, hey man, and the shelter worker said, wow sir, what can we do for you? He says, hey, I was out on a morning walk and found this dog. And the worker was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And he said, yeah, I thought it was the right thing to do. I should just bring him here, maybe he could find a home. And so the shelter worker was like, oh my gosh, we can't thank you enough, because, old dogs, they almost never get a second chance. And so the shelter worker said, sir, would you just please fill out some information about you, maybe where we can contact you, and where you found the dog. We'll take him in the back. Who knows? Maybe he's microchipped. He's obviously in his late teens. They really didn't microchip back then, but who knows? Old man fills out the information. Shelter worker comes back and says, hallelujah! He's microchipped. I can't believe it. We can find his owner. And then compare the information. From the outside looking in, this was this old man's dog that he was throwing away. Now, if I had been there, I'd have lost my mind. I would have been like, are you kidding me? Why in the world? How could you be so freaking cruel? What if someone threw you away? Like, are you kidding me? I'd have been crazy, but you know what? Thank God I wasn't there. Because here's what the shelter worker did. She didn't, not only did she not use why, she didn't even misuse what. She didn't say, what's wrong with you? You know the question that she asked this man in that moment? She said, sir, what happened to you? What's going on? How can I help you? And at that moment, the man just burst into tears. And when he finally stopped, he said, this is Joshua. I've had Joshua for 16 years. He was the cutest 8-week-old little basset hound puppy in the world. He says, there's nothing more important to me than my dog. He is my best friend. He's my whole world, but I'm dying. And I'm being forced into a medical facility. And he said, man, I'm sorry. I offered to pay them all the money that I had if I could take my dog. And they said, no. And he said, man, I'm sorry. I panicked. And I thought if I came here and said that he was a stray, instead of the fact that I had to give him up, that I had to surrender him, it would give him more time to find a home. Now I understand. And here's the beautiful thing. As soon as this woman, she knew that if we allow somebody to tell their story, it creates one thing, a possibility. Because she asked that question, she said, sir, there's a sanctuary down the hill, and they take in old animals. Maybe they have room for one more. And the only reason that Joshua, wonderful, never barked, perfect, wonderful Joshua, got to live the last 6 months of his life being spoiled and loved and adored and pampered is because, think about it, one person asked one question. What if we ask people, like, what does it feel like when you're depressed? What if we ask people, like, how do you make it through a day? Like, what's it like on your very, very worst day? Like, what if we ask people, what can I do to support you? Not, are you okay? Not, can I do anything? No, what can I do? What if we allow them to tell the story of their agony, to tell their story of despair, to tell their story of absolute distress, and all we do is listen. And then if we really want to try and offer something, ask their permission. May I offer something? And if they say no, like, you're not being shut down, what you've done is given them a gift of your listening. And in the words of Rachel Naomi Remen says, our listening creates a sanctuary for the homeless parts in another person. And you're like, amen. So become a master of remembering people's names and recognize them. Leverage questions of what and not why to understand behavior and make no sense. And then take the time to let people know how you feel. Now, I love the text. My 71-year-old former retired 2-star general brother, as I say, he's a texting maniac. The first time I went to the 11th Airborne up in Alaska, he said, watch out for moose. And he had a little moose emoji. Dude, who are you? But the man is a master. He was incredibly firm, but the guy was unbelievably fair. People loved serving, and he knew different things. And so he shared with me over the years these things, and not knowing one day I would teach them, but he was mentoring me, like, because he's my dad. And he found out that one of his officer's wife's mother died, and my brother wrote a handwritten note. And the email from the officer was, sir, we have a war going on. How did you know and how do you have time to do this? We can't thank you enough for your kindness and your generosity at the passing of Nancy's mom. But here was the other part, and this is what I teach in leadership courses. He said, sir, I've been part of this Army for 23 years, and I can tell you without a doubt this is the finest organization that I've ever been part of. Now, do you think it was because my brother wrote a note that it was the best organization, or it was because my brother created an atmosphere which precedes culture, an atmosphere of connection to allow people to feel seen, heard, and valued, and thus have hope for the mission? I would say it was the latter. So don't diminish the power of a text, especially when you become aware of what people's hard and special days are. They're incredible. These handwritten notes, I think, are really I used to say the granddaddy of them all. It's really the grandmamas of them all, because grandmas are really amazing. Granddads can be kind of stern. Grandmama. So 10th Mountain Division, when I went, and the major back there has been to the 10th Mountain Division. So at the time, it was the great Major General, 2-star General Milford Beagle Jr., they call him Beags. So I worked with the division, I briefed over the course of a week, and I came home, and there was that uniquely sized envelope. And I didn't recognize the writing, and I looked on the back. General Beagle was very humble. So his return address on the back of the card, it just says Milford Beagle Jr. So he's humble like my brother is. David, my words won't do justice in expressing my thanks to you or my appreciation for your connection to me and the 10th Mountain Division. You have touched more souls and impacted more people than you know. The power of hope is real, and if hope were a picture, it would be you. You are the picture of hope. Respectfully, your friend, Bees. Now, this is a man like my brother that's not just going to say things to say things. And the beautiful thing about a timely, specific, and authentic text, or a timely and specific, authentic note, what this does is challenges the monster. If this man, now a 3-star general, says to me, you are the picture of hope, and I know he considers me as a friend because I have his personal cell phone number, which is mind-blowing to me, that the level of connection is that deep, then what the monster may be having me feel is not right. So one quick quote, I want to do a little demonstration. So Drew Ramsey is an extraordinary psychiatrist, and he has this quote that perfectly sums up this talk. And in military terms, we call it a brief, and I'm sure the major has had more than one briefing. So what Drew Ramsey says is this, and this may be the most important thing I'll say all day. So please take this to heart. So Dr. Ramsey says this, and Dr. Ramsey specializes in people like me, people who are suicidal. He says, someone you see today is thinking about killing themselves. Your smile, your question, your love, you know what? It could save them. You know why I know? They told me it did. So, for me, we come into this world and we're really like, allow these lighters to be represented. So we have a light. We don't have to do anything to earn this. We are born. We didn't come into this life angry. We didn't come into this life with nothing else. We get to have this. But what happens is life can sometimes take our flame away. And a lot of times it doesn't make any sense because if you look at the lighter, it's like, well, this person is still lit, and you still have some fuel here for what's going on. But then what can happen is we can fall into a pit. Now, if this were perfectly clear, what we notice is people just look at us and say, hey, you're being lazy, get up! You have everything to be grateful for. There are children starving in Africa. You don't have it so bad. What do you have to be impressed about? Like, that's what we're doing. But people don't realize. And then what happens is life and all the stresses and everything else can have a person drown. But again, this is all clear, so people don't realize what's going on. And it just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming. But these people here, what I teach the Army is, you're traumatized soldiers. You're ones that came into the military with some sort of horrific hell that they made it through, that they didn't talk about because maybe they're looking for a better life. Those are your most resilient soldiers. So this thing can turn you upside down, but it's still floating. They still have the ability. Somehow these people are able to come. And then at one point, maybe they can get themselves out. Maybe they somehow can dry themselves off and return to what it looks like normalcy. But then they're like, they've lost their flame. But again, they show up and they think, man, you used to be so happy. What the heck is wrong with you? Like, you're nothing but a downer. Like, come on, think about how great your life is. And you think, well, what happened to your life? Here's what we're supposed to do. Because when we feel good, and we go up to a person like this is what we're supposed to do. People aren't broken. They're wounded. They're hurt. They're injured. They're traumatized. But there still is the possibility that there's something in there that if we could create the experience where they felt seen, heard, and valued, where if they could give them just by proximity, by in connection with us, and we benefit the same because when the two lights come together, we get empowered as well, things can be different. The VA is an amazing organization that gets a lot of bad press. I think what the VA is charged to do is really, I don't see how the VA is able to do it. And now having this extraordinary gift, really priceless to me, to be able to support not just veterans, but also the service staff who supports veterans, it is like a dream come true. So thank you for doing more and more with less and less, for being able to allow your heart to be the foundation and the purpose of why you serve, continuing to show up when everybody else has pitched these souls out to the wind. As a grateful citizen, as a son of a veteran, I stand in awe of you and thank you for the generosity of your time and your incredible spirit. God bless.